Hi, this is Sarah Czar.
And this is Andrew DeYoung.
And this is episode 3 of The Launchbox, which is a special series of this creative life about everything that happens with a book between the time you're basically done writing it and it is published into the world. How are you right now, Andrew?
I'm good. It's November. It's getting cold here in Minnesota, which is where I live. Everyone's healthy except for the cat, who is stressed out enough that we actually put her on Prozac.
Her and me
that's
both,
happening.
baby.
Yeah, exactly. Turns out humans are not the only ones stressed out by the pandemic. It's animals too. So
Now, how did you know this was going on with your cat, and what was the process by which she saw a psychiatrist?
Well, she has been for the past 6 to 9 months been tearing out her own fur, like cleaning herself kind
baby.
of obsessively, so much
Yeah.
cleaning that her fur is starting to come out, and it's in a very like consistent pattern. It looks like someone took an electric razor and like shaved off her fur. Like she's doing it very, I don't know, there's just a
Methodically.
very clear border to the area that she's tearing it out. But we thought it would resolve itself. It didn't. We brought her in, and then the vet actually told us that it is feline OCD,
Oh.
but that cat Prozac is the way to address that. So we've got her Prozac. It's liquid. We put it in her food, a few little drops every time we feed her, once a day. And yeah,
Now,
she seems to be doing
like
better.
I have feline OCD, but it means me obsessing over my cat.
Yeah.
So
No,
that's
me
just
too.
not what I would think of if I heard the phrase feline OCD out in the world.
Yeah, I mean, talking to the vet, it was like, well, can you prescribe us anything for worrying about this cat? But they only prescribe for animals, it turns out. So,
That's unfortunate.
and how are you?
I'm good today, pretty much. I mean, I mentioned, I use the word harried. It's just Monday. I was looking at my, I use kind of a electronic to-do list, or I have a little to-do list for every day of the week. And my Monday one, for some reason, has like 15 things on it. I don't know why I didn't just spread them out. Obviously, no one's going to force me to do them today, but they're things I feel I need to do more or less right away. And they're all today. But that's fine. I should mention it's Monday, November 15th, just in case anything wacky happens between recording and posting. But what wacky thing is going to happen in the world? I mean, everything's been so chill. So what could go wrong?
Like every week, there's something, every day.
Yeah, multiple times a day. I'm trying not to read the news too much. I think I'm experiencing again, what everyone is. It's not unique to me, but just trying to find that balance of the old normal's not coming back, but the new normal changes so frequently that you can't like settle into it. And you're still like grieving the old normal while trying to just live your life and let go of whatever your expectations have been about what this year is going to be, or next year, or the year after, or whatever. And so I'm sad a lot, and I'm worried a lot, and it makes me tired. So I've tried to just double down on self-care stuff, which for me includes minimizing my screen time as much as I can, especially on social media apps, and like eating 3 meals a day that are composed of actual food, and not having alcohol even like socially, because it just slowly ticks my anxiety up until I'm like, and then I'm like, I gotta stop. Just even like one little tiny drink a day. I like to have my little cocktail hour reading time in the evening, but a few days of that in a row, and then I'm just beside myself with anxiety and like depression. So I'm, taking walks. I like the fall weather, trying to make sure I get enough sleep. I'm just doing all that extra because
You should.
there's so much to deal with, and I don't, nothing outside my front door feels like it's going to change. And so I'm trying to make my home like a safe, happy place where I take care of myself. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
hard right
how I'm
now. And you
coping.
were talking about grieving the old normal. Sometimes I feel like I'm even grieving the previous new normal that was like
Yes.
a couple weeks or a month ago. Like
Uh huh.
sometimes you get into a good groove and pandemic stuff seems manageable, case counts are okay, but then things change and then you're not just grieving 2 years ago or however long ago it was before any of this happened, but you're grieving like, man, wasn't the late summer nice? That would have been great to stay there. I say this in the context of like things are pretty bad right now in Minnesota. I think that we're among the worst
Same
states
in
in the
Utah.
United
Yeah,
States.
it's the same here. And yeah, I mean, there's that, that almost, because I don't have kids and I don't have to go out into the world, into a workplace, that in a way has just become background for me because I just
Hmm.
sort of default don't go places and do things, which is in itself a problem. But then there's the added layer of news consumption and being like, oh, like, how is like Biden and Trump are like they have like neck and neck approval ratings. And, why, like, former presidents are supposed to just go away. They've done their thing. And I don't like reading the articles that are like, a strong contender in 2024
No,
is. It's like, no, God, save us.
he's just not going to do the normal thing. He's not going to slink away. It's yeah,
No, well, he
I can't
can't
even
if he's
deal.
still trying to sell the narrative that
Ugh.
he actually won. He can't. He set it up so that he can't slink away because he just constructs this alternate reality and he has to obey the rules of that reality. Otherwise, it all gets shattered. So,
Hmm. Yeah, it's sickening. It's sickening. I mean, I'm not paying much attention to the news either. I think what I'm obsessing over is just thinking about the release of this book, which, is what we are here to talk about.
good
It's like,
segue.
well, I'm not trying, yeah, I mean, but it is consuming in the same way that maybe paying attention to the news was in different times, and that it's part of what I think is, at least it's true for me about the pre-release period or launch period, is that like it's a time of a lot of thought about one thing that you can't really control, and it can
Hmm.
become obsessive.
Yeah, I'm not experiencing that this time
Good for
because
you.
it is my 10th book. And we talked about this a little bit last time. I've been to this circus many times before.
Yeah.
Um, Almost to another thing I think we've talked about before, almost to my detriment, where I'm just like, because I'm not that excited just in general. I'm excited about my book. I like my book. I think it's great. And I'm excited for people to read it. But because of my overall disposition right now is not excited or even passionate, like even in a negative or obsessive way, I'm just not passionate right now. I'm not having too much obsessive thinking or anxiety. Although I think I would be if I were making the kind of move you are from YA to adult.
YA
The
to middle
going from
grade feels
YA,
less big.
yeah, because it's still the same category of publishing. Like,
Sure.
for people that don't know, publishers have their young reader division covers everything from picture book to young adult,
Right.
and it is separate from the adult division. And so everything that's on that young reader's side still feels part of the same piece, and I'm with the same editor, same imprint, because the imprint that publishes me does both YA and middle grade. And so nothing's really changed in that way for me. It's just like another book. The audience is going to be different, but my experience on the behind the scenes end is pretty much what I'm used to.
All right. Well, that's good, I guess. I mean, like if you have to choose between obsessive and kind of like, eh,
Dead inside.
I mean, I wish there was a happy medium, but if you have to choose one, I I'd choose like even keeled about the whole thing. I'm excited for your book. I think it's going to be great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I posted last week. I spent way too much time making a very childish image just because it was funny to me, that I posted on my Instagram, because I've been learning Canva like everyone else on the planet. And you can take the different objects from the image if you use the background remover correctly. So I have the figure of the main character. I just moved her around and pretended like she was reading a book about her and it was going to make her sad, but it's okay because she likes sad books, which is a theme in the book. This is this whole meta, stupid thing that excited me, but I wasted like a half a day making that Instagram post.
I saw
But I
it
think
and I
that's like,
liked it. I saw it and I liked it on Instagram. I'm sure that it is driving tons of pre-orders, so totally worth your time.
I'm, but that's a perfect example of the kind of thing when you're in this like pre-publication frenzy of stuff you can't control. You can just like go, I know I need to like post about this at least once this week. What should it be? And then like your day's gone making this image that is not going to drive pre-orders. Let's just be clear, you were being sarcastic.
But you're doing something, right? Like,
I feel like I'm doing something, so I could check that little
yeah,
thing off my list that was like post about a song called Home. Done.
you don't know what to do, so you do something. That is a big part of the
Yeah.
launch period, I think.
Exactly. Exactly. But some real things have been happening for both of our books in the last few weeks. I mentioned to you that I was involved in the casting of the audiobook, and you said, "Oh, I just sold audio rights too." So let's talk about that. In my publishing world, which is HarperCollins, they have their own audiobook arm. And so that's kind of included in my contract that they're going to, well, it's not a given. It's not a given that they're going to do an audiobook for any given book, even though they have an audio arm. But in this case, they are doing an audiobook, and it's all handled in-house at HarperCollins. Typically, they'll send me 3 audiobook narrators they're thinking about that have a track record in with the type of book. And then I listen to those and sort of rank my preferences, and they reach out to the first choice, and if the first choice can't do it, they go to the second choice, etc. But usually the first choice can do it. I mean, audiobook narrators are like everyone, you're just glad to have work lined up.
Hmm.
So that was exciting. Although one issue I've always had with my books is they're all set in the West, and many audiobook narrators have like an East Coast
Mm.
sound to their voice, which is interesting because the industry is sort of robust in Los Angeles, but I think a lot of actors from New York have moved to Los Angeles for work, and they end up doing a bit of audiobook stuff, and it's hard for me to my ear find the reader that sounds Western to me, particularly Californian, which is
Sure.
really different from how vowels sound back east and everything. But we did find this one person who's pretty much a Californian, and I think it'll be good. What was your deal with the audiobook?
So audio, I'm with a smaller publisher, as you know. Um, a smaller publisher is less likely to have an audio department.
Mm-hmm.
A big publisher like yours, they're doing, Harper's probably doing thousands of books a year. It makes a lot of sense for them to have an audio department. A smaller publisher probably won't, like just hire a producer and make a studio and stuff like that. So very often with a smaller publisher, you are either trying to sell rights to an audio company yourself, or the publisher might handle it as a sub-rights deal. And that is what happened here. They sell a lot of audio rights from their list to a third party called Dreamscape Audio. There's a few companies that like mainly do
Mm-hmm.
audio. Like Blackstone is one. Blackstone Audio. They do a ton of audiobooks. and buy rights from other publishers. And so that's what happened. And the audio company pays a little bit of money to get those rights, and some of it goes to the publisher, and some of it goes to me. That's how a sub rights deal works, and it's kind of like banked against your advance.
Exactly.
If
Like the
the dollars and cents of it is interesting to folks.
yeah, well, it's good to know if you're on the brink of getting a contract or signing a contract. It's good to have your expectations in the right place because granted contracts can work all kind of different ways, but typically the author portion of the sub rights, it's not like you get a check in the mail. It goes against your advance.
Right.
Now, exceptions to this would be, for example, selling a foreign language right that's not included in your contract. So, for example, with all my books at my first publisher, Little Brown Books for Young Readers, the precedent we set with my contract there, which is they bought world rights, which means their subrights division is going to handle finding the foreign publishers to do the translations and publish. I get a percentage of that, but it goes against earning out my advance. Yeah. The precedent we set with my contract at my current publisher is that they have, I can't remember if it's North American rights or world English rights. But in any case, that means my literary agency, their subrights division, has to work on selling the foreign rights. And then if I get those, then the check does come to me without having to go against my advance. So,
and the publisher gets no cut in that case, I would imagine.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. The agency gets a cut, and typically the standard agency cut for everything in America is 15%. I believe with some foreign rights it's 20%, but I'm actually not positive. In an ideal world, like let's paint a scenario where my book wins a Newbery.
Yeah.
Which is, not likely, but it's not impossible. So let's just say, let's pretend, let's indulge in my fantasy and say my book gets some kind of Newbery medal, whether it's an honor book or a winner. Now, it may have been that before that, foreign publishers weren't that interested in spending money on a middle grade realistic novel, no fantasy elements, nothing historical, just real world, a kid in America. Those don't tend to sell tons of foreign rights. But if it gets any award recognition, then your chances of selling those kind of rights goes way up. And that can potentially be a lot of money. Mm-hmm. If you sell to 8 or 9 different countries, and you're getting like an advance from each publisher in each of those countries, it can add up. And if you write like a huge bestseller and you've managed to retain foreign language rights in your contract, that can represent a large portion of income for that kind of a writer. What's your experience with foreign language rights been?
Well, I work at a publishing company, so I have experience with subrights on both sides of things. I have not gone to Frankfurt, but I've gone to Bologna, which is where your agency will probably try to sell your rights at Frankfurt, but Bologna is focused on the Bologna Book Fair is focused on children's books, and so your agency will almost certainly try to sell there. I have not sold foreign rights on any of my books. I would love to sell foreign rights on the Temps. I have for this one, and this is subrights too. It got optioned. This one got optioned.
Like for a film adaptation?
For film/TV.
Okay.
And, I think it's important to say that, like, a lot of books get optioned, and very few of the books that get optioned ultimately become movies or TV shows. So like it's just a thing
But
that
none of the
happens.
books that don't get optioned
Right, that's true.
get made into films or
That's
TV.
true. That is a first step that absolutely has to happen.
Right,
So
right, right.
like um I would love my book to be successful enough that like, I don't know, a publisher in France or Turkey or whatever was like, yeah, we have to have this. And then it's just kind of like, it's just a little bit more money. And if it sells well in that foreign territory, it's more money. But at this point, it's all stuff that is helping to pay down the advance, so that
Exactly.
the distance between me and earning out is shorter than it was before those deals happened.
Right. My I think my biggest foreign sale in the history of my books was, to me, surprisingly, the German rights for Sweethearts
Hmm.
sold for almost as much as my American Advance was.
Wow.
So that's what made it earn out in hardcover, which has been great because I still get a little money every 6 months. And when say a little, I do mean a little, like $100.
Right.
But it used to be more. But it can really accelerate when you've sold world rights, and your publisher gets a cut of foreign rights. It can accelerate earning out, and that can be a great thing. On the other hand, retaining those rights can also lead to more money in a different way that's just direct in your hand.
Yep.
Although it takes forever to get those checks processed, and then there's foreign taxes. So there's kind of pros and cons to both versions of the way that we sell foreign rights, either as a package to the original American publisher or as individual rights handled by your agency. There's pros and cons to both of those things.
Well, in my situation, I think I mentioned I have an agent right now, but I sold the temps without an agent. It was an open submission kind of situation. Um, it was actually better, like retaining rights. If there had been deals and I had retained rights, more money would have come to me. But I didn't have anyone selling for me. I didn't have an agent
Exactly.
at that point. Like, if I get 50% of whatever money the publisher makes in audio, that is, they're taking some of my money or whatever, but like 50% of something is way better than 100% of nothing. I had no way to make an audio deal or any foreign rights
Right.
deals.
You
And
as an
like
author,
there's access questions. And if your
yes.
agency has a way to sell foreign rights, it's great to try to retain. If not, then, having the publisher try to work those angles for you is not a bad
Mhm.
idea.
Yep. Because it's just like with anything, the people doing those jobs at the agency or at the publisher have relationships with their
Yep.
counterparts at the foreign publishers. They kind of know, like, what kind of books does this publisher like? What tends to do well in this country? The other thing that can happen, which is nice when you do have foreign translations out there, is you might get to travel. So the Italian version of Lucy Variations, my Italian publisher really liked that book, and I think it makes sense because it's about ideas and classical music and just things we might associate with a culture with a more history like
Mm-hmm.
Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And so they loved it. And even though it's not like some bestseller over there, my publisher brought me there for a big festival in Italy. So, like, I got to go to Italy, which I never
It's
would
great.
have gotten to do on my own dime. And I did add on days. I mean, because they're taking care of the travel. So all you got to do is like find an affordable Airbnb, and you can tell them whatever dates you want your plane tickets for. So I,
It's
tacked on
great.
my own personal travel. And that's just one of those things that makes me love being a writer. And just there's a lot of opportunities to not just see the world, but see other places in America. I got to do more travel in the first 10 years of my career than I ever imagined doing my whole life. And I'm glad I did. And I feel lucky because I don't know what the future of that is for publishers and writers and booksellers and how that's all going to work down the line. But I'm glad I got to experience a piece of that. And so, yeah, selling subrights can add to your general visibility in the publishing world, not just abroad, but at home as well.
Did any Italian or European media interview you while you were there? Was that part of it?
Yes.
So
I don't
one thing
remember
I've heard
specifics.
is that like European media just takes writers so seriously, novelists so seriously that like they could just ask you for your opinion about things, and then like the next day in the paper it'll be like, American writer says
Yes.
Donald Trump is bad. Like, I mean, that's not very controversial, but like it, your cultural statements are just taken very seriously over there.
It was good for my ego because I was on a panel at this book festival, and it was specifically, it was a book festival in Mantova, I want to say. Um, and it was a regular big festival with all kinds of things, but it did have specific panels for children's and young adult. But whereas when I've done like young adult book festivals here, it might be like you go on stage and it's they pass out cookies and go like, what's your favorite way to eat an Oreo? So you're sitting there as an author, eating an Oreo. Or you go onto stage and there's like a version of Hollywood Squares or whatever, and
Right.
you're in a game show. So our American idea of what you have to do to make something engaging for teenagers is very different. So there, and to be clear, I don't like that. I don't like the way we do it here. Personally, it's not me to go and try and be quote unquote fun. It's just not it's not me.
We all know that you're fun, but I hear you.
Yeah, I don't need to prove it. So at this Italy festival, just the level of the questions that the other panelists were asking me and the questions from the audience. And I went to this thing in another town that I don't remember the name of all of a sudden because I'm 51 now. I don't remember things that just happened. And I was at did a little session at a book fair there where the audience was all adults. And just like you said, they're asking me questions like, what do you think of like the place of classical music in a modern young person's life? And, all these like sort of big idea
Hmm.
philosophical questions that I didn't always feel equipped to answer, but it was just different. The way how seriously they took everything was different. Oh, and I went to a library event also that was just packed with adults and some teenagers. And a big part of that was the translator. I feel like the translator's name should be on the book. I mean, I could tell from the way she was engaging with me and the questions she was asking me about my book and the way she was talking to me about my book that she really understood it and had written a great translation.
Mm.
Now, you don't always get that. Um, Sometimes I've plugged book descriptions or whatever into Google Translate from some of my foreign editions, and I'm like, that doesn't really sound like my book. Because honestly, you don't know unless you know the language. You've got no idea what the translator did. But I definitely had the sense on that trip that this translator for this book had like really understood it, written a great translation that was maybe even better than what I wrote, and maybe some of the depth of the questions that were coming at me at those events were thanks to her.
Well, it'd be really fun if that were to happen with these two new books. One thing I can say about subrights and your experience versus mine with the audio is that I think that, and I don't know this for a fact because it hasn't happened yet, but I think that because my audio is coming to the world through a subrights deal, I am very unlikely to be asked my opinion about like casting.
Mm-hmm.
But,
You
I
never
don't know.
know. You never know what the standards of the company are.
Right.
I was going to ask you, tell us more about the film option on the Temps.
The film option. So, the publishing company that I'm publishing with is called Keylight Books, and they acquire fiction actually with the intent to try to develop film deals with what
Oh.
I think is a fair split with the authors. So very shortly after I was acquired, my editor was telling me, okay, we're going to pitch it to XYZ producer, and they were working with a film agent. And for about 3 or 4 weeks, the time it took for it to go out on submission and get an option deal, I was getting like a lot of hits on my website because I look at analytics. I was
Mm-hmm.
getting a lot of hits on my website from LA, Hollywood. It was like a whole deal for a little while. It seems like it went pretty well, and someone did pick up the option. But then, so my understanding about option is like why it's called an option. They're not actually buying the rights. They're buying the
Correct.
option to buy the rights
Correct.
because staging a film or a TV production is so complicated. They
Mm-hmm.
have to secure funding and distribution and stuff like that. They can't commit right away because they don't know, but they need the sort of like competitive landscape to be cleared of anything else so that they
Yes.
can pursue all that stuff. So they just say, we want the exclusive option to buy the rights if all these other conditions are met, which we're going to work on, or maybe we'll just leave the option on the shelf while we work on other things.
Mm-hmm.
It's really uncertain. Um, but the option itself was fun. I mean, like getting that is like, oh, this is fun.
And normally it's for a limited amount of time.
Yep.
So they might buy an option for 12 months or 18 months, or if it's like a really hot property, 6 months. Um, and I don't, depending on the different deals, you could get an amount of money every time that option is renewed. That might be a small amount or a medium or large. It's probably not going to be large because if it's going to be a large amount, it's probably the kind of book they are just going to buy the rights outright.
Right.
Like your Divergence or whatever. But for regular people, that little bit of option money that comes around every year can really make a difference. I had a friend who writes literary adult novels, and there was this one kind of eccentric rich person who was really into his book and optioned it for like $25,000 and renewed it every year for like 12 years.
Whoa.
I mean, that's like a basic income right there, totally passive,
It is. That's
So
amazing.
you never know what can happen.
Eccentric rich people. You should hear
Come
about
to
our
us.
books. Yes, please.
Oh, I really would love an eccentric rich person to just
Take an interest.
fall in love with my work,
Yeah,
but not with me.
sure.
A patron, I think a patron of the arts is what we call that, not an eccentric rich person.
Sure.
Okay, let's look at our little list here. Oh, another thing we both did in the last few weeks, coincidentally, was write letters to booksellers. Tell me how yours happened, and then I'll tell you about mine.
Well, my publisher suggested it. They want to do a bookseller outreach program or bookseller outreach tactics, and a letter from the author is part of it. So I wrote something that, and I mean the way that I'm saying this is making it sound like I was really cynical about it. I mean, like it was all true and from the heart, like stuff about my book, but also how much I appreciate booksellers, independent booksellers, which I do. I think that independent bookstores and booksellers are really important. Um, and that was sent out to, I don't even know, like after I wrote the thing, it kind of went uh, into a black box, and I don't really know what they did with it. But
Mm-hmm.
my understanding is that they sent it out as part of some package to a lot of different, I think, especially independent bookstores across the
Right.
country. And the purpose of it, as I understand it, is just like awareness among booksellers, because booksellers do drive, they make recommendations. They can vote for um, books that they're particularly excited about for a list called the Indies Next List. I think I got that right. There's booksellers are important early
Right.
influencers.
It's another way to try and make your book memorable and personal,
Right.
like with that personal touch. Now, what did they tell you, like how long to make it, and like how long was yours?
I can't quite recall. I think they said maybe 300 or so words, like no,
It's short.
yeah, it's short. Like you don't want, I imagine that booksellers get a lot of promotional mail, so you don't want them to open your thing and be confronted by a wall of text because like everybody's
Yeah,
busy.
it wants to be a one sheet, which would include like
Right.
the publisher's info and perhaps introduction, and then a sign off, all that stuff, and nothing too dense. That was the same for me. They were like, "You've probably done this before. We want to do this letter," and I was like, "Actually, I haven't done this before."
Did you put stuff about your book in the letter, or was it just purely, "Hey booksellers, you're awesome. We love you" stuff, or was it like a both and?
I was really focusing on me and the book,
Hmm.
so maybe I should have made it more about them, but my publisher approved it. I mean, I did in closing. I was like, "Thank you, you know, for all you do for helping these books matter." But it was kind of like, for me, I wanted to position it in contrast to books that are like epic hero stories or Marvel type book or a big like portal fantasy. It was sort of like me saying why I think these small family stories matter. In a way, it was like at least a few lines of it were like my personal manifesto
Hmm.
as a writer. So yeah, it wasn't, I didn't do as much kissing up as perhaps I should have.
Well, you've only got so much space. I don't think anybody knows like the right way to do these things, What's going to grab someone's attention on the other side? The number of letters that you have to write as a writer are just like basically pitching yourself. It's just, it gets a little excessive at some point, but that's the game.
I think the dream is, for many writers, is never having to write anything that's not your book.
Hmm.
The last thing I have on my little list here as far as updates is I learned more about Ingram Spark, which is the platform through which I would need to set up paperback sales of my self-published
Mm-hmm.
This Creative Life book outside of the Amazon platform. But it's also what like an independent bookstore would need to be able to order it to have in their store. I One thing I found out about Ingram Spark was there is no way, if you set up a pre-order system with them, like if I get my book up there for to set up the paperback pre-order, they don't provide any tracking information about that at all. So
Hmm.
if I did that, I would have no way of knowing if and how many were being pre-ordered.
Weird.
Yeah, I thought that was strange too. But and then similarly with Draft to Digital, where I have the ebook set up for everywhere that's not Amazon, they don't really have that pre-order report available. And then I just started thinking about it and just being like, for this book, pre-orders, it doesn't matter. I don't need pre-orders for this book because, like we talked about in episode one of the functions of pre-orders is showing the publisher in-house, like, people are interested in buying this book.
Mm-hmm.
People in these regions are interested, so we're gonna like do advertising here or like put some money behind this or whatever. But with self-publishing, it's just me, so I don't
You don't need to
I don't
convince
need that.
yourself that you're cool.
No, I don't need to convince myself, and I don't have marketing resources to allocate to 1,000 different books. It's just this book. So I've kind of chilled out on doing all that for now so that I can just focus on pulling the book itself together. And whether I have pre-orders or not, it's really not going to matter. So
Now, something I've always wondered, if an independent bookstore orders a self-published book paperback from Ingram Spark and they don't sell it, can they return it or do they just dump it?
I'm glad you asked that question because I forgot about this piece of it. I did go quite a ways into setting up the book on Ingram Spark. Even though I'm not like concerned about pre-orders and stuff right now, I did go ahead and start the process of setting it up. And I got pretty much all the way to the step of uploading the manuscript. And it has so much more robust information collection than the KDP on Amazon or
Mm-hmm.
draft to digital. A lot more fields to fill out, a lot more granular data and information you could put in, and a lot more options. And so one of the options that you have to check off is like, I have to decide if the book will be returnable or not. And so I can check one of three options. I can make it non-returnable. I can make it returnable, but Ingram Spark, but Ingram Spark just pulps it or whatever if they don't
Mm-hmm.
want it around or there's no other orders for it. The third option is returnable, and those return copies get shipped to me at an additional cost of a lot per copy. Like it would just be a money losing proposition that you would probably want to choose the option of making it returnable but pulpable,
Do
because
they
if you
charge
don't
you at
make
all
it
for pulping it?
no. So you don't want to make it, I feel you wouldn't want to make it non-returnable, because you want to make it as attractive as possible to bookstores so that they can't go wrong by having it in their
Right.
store.
It's a
And
big
so
risk to
one,
buy something non-returnable. It's a disincentive.
right. So you want to make it returnable. And the other thing is that you can do in Ingram Spark is you can set the amount of the wholesale discount, which is not a thing you do with Amazon. It's like that's all preset by them. So the wholesaler discount is like, what is it going to cost? Say my local bookstore, the King's English or Weller Bookworks, either of them. If they want to have this book in their store, and they probably do because I'm local, and they probably will, if I ask nicely. What's it going to cost them per copy to buy it, right? And because what a lot of people might forget when they're just out there buying books is that the bookstore has to make a profit. The bookstore is, getting books wholesale, just like any other like clothing store,
Mm-hmm.
dishes, kitchen equipment, whatever else. They're buying things at a wholesale price. But the difference between a bookstore and the other types of stores I just mentioned is that the retail price of the book is already set. It is the cover price. And you can choose to discount it, but you can't make it more. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I suppose you could try, but you're not going to go to a bookstore, see that it says like $21.99 on the cover, and then pay $32 for it,
No.
So they're limited in how much profit they can make. So when you're setting up a book on Ingram Spark and it gets to the part where it's like, you can set a wholesale discount, you can set it to nothing. You can set it or you can set it to a percentage, anywhere from 30 to 55%. And if you are like little Miss Author who's thinking like you're just going to get rich off your book, and you're setting that up, and you look at like how much of a discount bookstores will get and how that reduces your take per book, you might think, oh, I'm going to just give them a 30% discount. That's still a really big discount, and then I'll get more per book. But no, that is incorrect. That's not a really big
No, it's
discount.
not.
The standard wholesale discount for booksellers is 55%. And Ingram Spark even has like a little help field there where it's just like, we strongly urge you to put 55% in this box. Because as with the making things non-returnable thing, if they're like standard from regular publishers getting a 55% wholesaler discount, and then they see your book and it's like, I'm getting 30% and I can't return it, like, I'm not going to carry this book. So that's one thing when you're doing indie publishing or self-publishing. If you want your book in stores, you have to understand how the business
Yeah.
works, because the numbers can certainly be daunting. Like, you're thinking, this is going to be my passive revenue stream, and I'm going to set this up, and if I sell X number of copies, I'll be financially stable next year. And then you get in there and you're like, oh, I might just end up earning like $1 a copy or something. And that's like, yeah, that's kind of what you,
That's
as
the
an author with a
reality.
traditional publisher, that's about what it is. So it just makes you realize, yeah, there's standards, there's a system, there's a machine that's not free to operate. So distribution is not free. And bookstores don't they don't live on like the good wishes of book lovers. They have to make a profit, and they make the profit by the difference between the cover price and the wholesale discount. And that's it, so you have to like check that box and be like, yes, my local bookstore is going to get 55% off so they can make some money on my little book. And if they can't sell it, they need to be able to return it and make room on their shelves for something that will sell.
Yeah, I mean, if you think that booksellers are valuable contributors to like the world of books, which I do, they should make money. Like that's only
Well, they
fair.
got to pay their people. It's not a volunteer job.
No, they got to pay rent. They got to pay their employees. They got to make some money, and they have to keep books on the shelves. I mean, that costs money too. So,
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. 55. That's the way to go.
55%, baby. and what's nice about this platform, Ingram Spark, because there are so many options and different check boxes, you can just see how checking different things affects your book. What's the trim size going to be? What kind of paper am I opting for? What cover, what weight of the paperback cover, what weight paper? You can choose like a premium or just like a standard. So all that stuff affects how much you can make per copy if you set it at a reasonable cover price. That's another thing, is what are you going to set the cover price at?
Right.
Now, I could set the cover price at like $25. But if it's going to be like a little 150 page paperback, you're not going to ask people to pay $25 for that. Although, and this, now we just get into my ranting territory, you will see like influencers, people online who like sell like PDFs of their like 25 keto hacks or whatever. They are selling like 20-page PDFs for like $29.99, and it's infuriating. It's ridiculous. Don't buy that stuff. It's pointless. Anyway, so when I'm setting a cover price for my book, whether it's for the ebook or the paperback, as someone familiar with the industry, I'm going in with knowing what I expect a book to cost. As someone who buys books, I know what I expect a book to cost. And I think a lot of people who go into thinking, I'm going to self-publish a book or I'm going to sell a PDF, they're not really book buyers.
Right.
And so they don't understand like the appropriate range of prices or the perceived value, or what you would, you pick up a small book, a small paperback, and like, what would you kind of expect that to cost? You'd be like, it's going to be somewhere between maybe $8.99 and like $14.99, something like that, for just like let me look. So this is my model, is one of these
like
Stephen
a mass
Pressfield
market
books.
kind of paperback or a trade paperback?
It's like a 5x8 trade paperback, and it's short.
Say
so let's see.
$12.99.
His is, it's $12.95.
I was pretty close.
So there you go. So whereas someone unfamiliar with the business who just is thinking like, this is going to be my passive income stream that buys me a vacation home, I have to make this thing cost $35 so I get $10 a copy. They're not going to sell too many copies of that book. They shouldn't. If the world were fair, although someone selling 25 top keto hacks is probably going to get a lot of people to buy that $30 book, because our country is insane.
Yeah, and a lot of the people buying are probably not book buyers either, and they really want those hacks. I don't know. What I see, I don't know. We could do a whole episode on influencers. We should become influencers. That's where the money is,
yes.
But I don't think I'd be very good at it.
We should be anti-influencers.
Ooh, yeah, meta.
We want to influence people against influencers.
Yeah, just give us $9.99 for 5 easy steps to stay away from influencers.
Let's touch briefly. We talked about this in our email ahead of time, and we don't want to go too long, but let's just briefly talk about burnout, because we both are experiencing it, I think.
Yeah. We talked a little bit. I think that maybe some themes from the beginning of the pod can come back, because obviously part of it is pandemic related. Nothing is normal. You settle into a normal, and then normal changes again. That's part of it. We talked a little bit about different reactions to this whole launch process. For me, I'm just kind of obsessing. You're kind of I don't know if you would say numbing, But like, I don't know. There's the
It's probably
pandemic,
accurate.
there's the launch thing, work, family. I have two little kids. People who don't have kids can certainly be burned
You've
out.
got a cat on
I've got a cat
antidepressants.
on antidepressants. She's burned out. Um, I'm not writing as much as I should be. Like I should be working on the next thing, but like I'm really having trouble finding any momentum. I think I'm in a state personally of resignation to burnout, of like, I think this is just going to be the way it is, and I allow myself that or something. I'm allowing
Mm-hmm.
myself
Mm-hmm.
that for this season of life, just to
Like
get
like
through.
not like not trying to fix it, but just like living with it.
Yeah, not, I don't, maybe I don't have to be productive. For,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and things will feel different and then I'll be able to do whatever I need to do. But for today, surviving this day is enough.
Yeah. I think that anytime if I'm burned out with writing and I'm not writing, if I stop trying so hard, a lot of times it kind of naturally flows back. Um, it's like quicksand.
Hmm.
If you struggle against it, like you're gonna get sucked down. But if you kind of just stay still and try to stay on top and not like fight it, you might be able to not
Just
get
like
sucked down.
flatten your body, increase your surface
Yeah,
area,
I'm
don't
like,
struggle.
people can't see the video, but we're both like holding our arms out, imagining we're just floating on our backs on quicksand. And it's like, don't make any sudden moves. Yeah, it's hard. I'm having a hell of a time drafting my next book. I'm already thinking about, like, well, if I can't make the season it's supposed to come out in, you know, can I make the next season? And maybe I need to set this down and work on something else. Which is hard because, especially in young adult and children's publishing, there is a sense that you should be on top of your one book every 12 to 18 months
That's grueling.
paradigm,
That's a
which is
grueling
a
schedule.
lot. It's grueling, and I think some people are good with it, but I just, the more I experience this life, I just know, like, I am not a book a year person, but I have to be for financial reasons. And so that makes it a struggle and that increases my burnout. So if money were no object, I would just take like a whole year. Well, I don't probably wouldn't be a whole year. I would just like take time off until something naturally came to me that I really wanted to dive into. But as it is, I sort of have to generate, which is fine. I don't think that's a bad way to write, and it doesn't, the end product of something generated versus something that just kind of came to you is probably indistinguishable. But the process of doing it is just different. And so I would really love to be able to take fallow periods
Hmm.
between books, but I can't really afford to. So that's just the economic reality of writing being your day job versus having a day job and also writing.
I mean, we're in a period of the great resignation, right? Like people are quitting their day jobs. People are
Mm-hmm.
having burnout and they're having complicated relationships with the things that they do to pay the bills. Capitalism is a burden on everybody, and it's a unique burden on writers who, I mean, there are writers who it's not their main source of income. They have a different hustle. And there's writers who it is their main source of income. But regardless of who you are, kind of like having to turn yourself into a factory or having to turn yourself into a product is
Mm-hmm.
extremely difficult. Extremely
Yeah.
difficult. It's not helping the burnout problem in this country. Well, and we're not products, we're people. We should be allowed to rest. Nothing that we're saying changes anything. There's still those economic realities, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's hard. Take care of yourself because
I'm trying.
we're not products. We make products, but that's not who we are. So
Happy
happy
Monday.
Monday, everyone. Sarah and I might be in a mood today.
Although by the time you're listening to this, it might be the Friday before Thanksgiving week and you might just be in a great
That's
mood.
right.
Well, it's been great to catch up.
Yeah, good to catch up with you.
Folks can you can just listen to the podcast and look at the very minimal show notes on the episode information. Or if you want extended show notes, you can go to thiscreativelife.substack.com, or you can go to sarahzar.com, or is it just andrewdeyoung.com?
andrewdeyoung.com. Yep.
andrewdeyoung.com. You can pre-order our books, or you can just boycott the whole entire purchasing system and just request it at your local library.
I support that as well.
Until next time. Yeah, maybe next time we'll be getting close to the holidays and closer to our release dates. Maybe I'll get some reviews. I don't know. We'll find out.
There'll be something to talk about.
Something's gonna happen. Okay, this has been Sarah Zar and Andrew DeYoung.
Thank
Goodbye.
You.